My favourite client has asked me to carve this tree for her. I have done some other commissions for her as well. On the other side of the road, I carved a heron a couple of years ago. But with this tree, we have a whimsical theme. So we're going to have a couple of little bunny rabbits carved into this tree and some gnome houses. So come along with me and see if we can convert this tree into something worth looking at or just a giant pile of firewood. Voila! Look at that! First task of the day is fuel up and oil up the saws. And once that's done, we can have a look at the tree and see how we're going to attack this project. As I said, my client wants a bunny rabbit in the bottom here. You see me, I'm just putting some guidelines here to give me an idea where the positioning of these main components of the carving will be. So there'll be a bunny rabbit in the bottom here. There's going to be a bunny rabbit up on the branch. You can see on the left hand side a branch branching off there. You can see me looking at it now. I'm going to utilize that branch to get the bunny rabbit out of this section of the tree, because without it it'd be very hard to fit it in there. And then the rest of the tree I'm going to carve a whimsical gnome's house. So little roofs and windows, little walkways, that sort of thing. So I've got a basic idea and we can go from there. These are chainsaw chaps. These are a specific safety component when operating a chainsaw. There's layers and layers of a fine fibre in these, so that if you should accidentally run the chainsaw into your leg, those fibres will fill the saw up and stall the saw before it cuts you. So one of the main components of our safety equipment when operating chainsaws are these chaps. Of course, then there's eyewear and hearing protection, of course. But once we've got all that on, we can crack on. I'll generally have a range of saws for the jobs I do. This is not a huge tree, so I've only sort of got two types of saws here. I've got a medium-sized saw, which is what I'm using now. I'll use this to get the basic shapes in. You can see the first job here I've got to do is actually get the tree recessed around where the bunny rabbit's going to be carved. So basically I'm opening the tree up so that I've got a piece out of the tree that's going to be the bunny rabbit. So that's what this medium saw will do. I'll do most of the large grunt work and getting the basic shapes with this, and then once that's done we'll move on to a more detailed saw. Alright, so we can just see the piece I'm going to leave outside the tree to make the rabbit. So I think it's time we slap her into time lapse and go from there. You can see here that a chainsaw does not operate without its chain on. Unfortunately, it broke. I'm not quite sure why it did it. I wasn't wrenching the saw dad, so it wasn't that, it just broke. So luckily enough, I brought a spear and I was able to fire that up and carry on. As I explained at the beginning of the video, this is the limb that I'm going to utilize to make the rabbit's head. I'm squeezing this rabbit up on this branch. It's going to work out pretty good because it's almost like the rabbit's looking down the driveway. But that's what we're going to use that limb for. So I'm getting most of the main components done with the big saw. So it's quite cubey at the moment. But it's all I'm working on here is trying to get the proportions right and get the definitions right of what I'm trying to carve. Once I've done that, you can see I've just swapped over to the small detail saw. Basically, this saw's got a really thin bar that goes to a point, and then I can create the detail in the chainsaw carving with this. And then I'll carry on working the carvings up to a finished point. Well, as finished as you can get with the chainsaw. So you can see me working on the rabbit here, starting to get the details in with the detail saw, and you can see how I've fitted the head into the limb that was coming off the side. You can see it there. That's the head coming in, and just to give you an example, this is what it started out as. Now this is a bit of the trick that you do when you're chainsaw carving raw trees like this. Chainsaw carving's, not easy, but when you've got a round log and you just carve something out of it that's big enough to carve what you need, that's relatively easy. What can get really tricky is when you're doing work like this. You're trying to fit carvings into a weird shaped tree. This isn't a big tree, it's a weird limby thing, so it takes quite a bit of skill to try and figure out how to fit these things into this sort of tree. You can see with this rabbit is coming out pretty good, but it takes a bit of work and a bit of understanding of how the carving is going to sit in the tree to make it come out to a reasonable result. Now this limb in the back of the tree here, I hadn't quite figured out what I was going to do with it. Of course I've got the rabbits, and then I was able to get little gnome houses out of the other limbs, some little stairways and windows and that sort of thing, and it's working out pretty good. But that limb in the back there, I had no idea at this point on what I was going to do with it. My client said, well, just carve what you see in it. So at this point, I hadn't figured out what I was going to do. Later on in the video, I have a bit of a epiphany and figure out what I could carve into this back limb. The whole process that I approach this chainsaw carving is very similar to whittling something. So I'm gradually taking bits away as the shape's forming. So before we had the bigger saw, and I was defining the shapes and trying to get the proportions right. And now with the little saw, if I've got the proportions right, I'll just keep whittling away the components till they form the shape and the size I'm looking for. Once I get that done, I'll start rounding them off and smoothing them, and putting more detail in. And you can see the progression of the carving as I do this. The bunny rabbits are just about finished. They're looking pretty good. So the next thing here is I'll start working on the windows for the little gnome houses. So I'll start putting these windows in, and then work on the details of these two little gnome houses, plus little walkway and chimney on the other gnome houses. I still haven't figured out yet what I want to do with that limb in the back. It was about now. We had a lunch break, and then I came back, and when I came back, a monarch butterfly flew in front of me, and that gave me the idea for something to put into this back limb. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a butterfly into it. So yeah, problem solved. We're almost at the end of a long day. You can see the butterfly coming up in behind there. I think it came out pretty good. As I get to this finishing point, I'll keep working around the carving and going around and around the components of it and tidying it up, taking any sort of squareness out and trying to round these things over, try and highlight the details. Try and basically tidy up any gouge marks or cut marks with the saw, smooth things off. Yeah, basically a general tidy up to try and make it look as good as possible. And there we are, we're completed. A couple of bunny rabbits, one here up on the limb looking down the road. We're able to squeeze him in. He come out pretty good. So he's sitting on the limb looking down the road. You can see the gnome houses. The one on the top there's got a little bit of a chimney. There's our butterfly in the back. And there's a back view of our butterfly. He come up pretty good. As we go around, you can see the windows that we've put in. Here's our bunny rabbit below here. Now I have him waving, so anyone that drives past in the driveway, little rabbit will be waving at them, hello or goodbye, depending on what way you're going. So he come up pretty good. So yeah, you can see how I've carved away the trunk and then put the bunny rabbit into the trunk like that. It's the only way you can do it. And then I put a little doorway here, so like the little gnome's coming out of the doorway, a little walkway there onto the stairs, and then he'll head up the stairs into another little doorway here. You can see that I carved into the trunk, and then all the way up to top to their little viewing platform with a little house and chimney. Obviously a nice little fireplace in there to keep warm. So yeah, that's the tree. Come up pretty good. It was a good day's work. Now, but before anyone out there starts screaming that I'm hacking away at live trees and you should be hugging them, not cutting them up with a chainsaw, this tree was dying and had to be cut down. So instead of it being cut down and burnt, my client, as always, would like to see them utilised into a sculpture or an art piece. Which I think is absolutely fantastic and a great way to utilise these trees. And that's what we did. We carved a little whimsical carving here with butterflies and rabbits and little gnome houses. As always, thank you for making the end of the video and watching it. And remember, if you like what you saw, please hit the thumbs up. If you like the content in my little channel, please subscribe. And I really appreciate your support. Okay, on to the next project.